We are live. This is Emil Fisher with another episode of my daily video cast, which is soon to be named. I actually have a post up on Facebook talking about how I need help naming it. Today, I've got two of my favorite human beings, Pablo Castro and Sean Daugherty, who are just two of my favorite people. They're two of my coaches, and they've been a big help to me throughout my martial arts journey. Pablo seems to have jumped off momentarily. Sean, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just trying to go share it.
I'm going to share it. I'm going to tag you guys before we really get into talking about this stuff. My screen is frozen. Do you see me?
I see you. You're moving good.
Okay. Well, then I guess it'll have to catch up a little bit. How you doing, Sean? How you doing with all these COVIDs?
I don't know. Yesterday I came out of like a 3-day anger binge.
Gotcha. Tell me more about that. What do you mean by a 3-day anger binge?
Well, I feel like I'm on trial waiting to be sentenced for a crime I didn't commit with a punishment I have no idea of the possibility thereof. And it's just like a very helpless feeling. You know the possibilities. I know the COVID virus is dangerous. I know it's real, but I also know there's power grabs in times like this. Historically speaking, there's bad things that can happen with the economy. So many things, and it's just there's nothing that I can personally do to really change anything about it. So therefore, I just have to accept. And going through that acceptance process, I had 3 days of anger of just pure. I was in war mode.
Gotcha. Pablo, how have you been managing?
Actually, I kind of got booted off here, but I'm back here now. As far as I think the question was managing as far as throughout this whole coronavirus quarantine type thing.
Yeah.
I never realized how much time I actually, or how much you do have when you don't have to, be at the gym or in court or at work or any of the other things that I do. So realize how much time I actually put outside of just my own time. So I have found a lot of time. I've been really almost reinventing myself. I've been getting into art, poetry. I've even tried to tackle playing the guitar here. So I've done a lot of things. In fact, earlier today, my son Pito came over and we actually rode a little bit on the mats. And actually, I tell you, he's getting big. And as a almost 17-year-old blue belt, this kid is tough.
Yeah, for sure.
We're we're trying to keep sanity, as I think we heard earlier. And kind of an insane situation that's going on right now.
Yeah. So I know that we had discussed a little bit in advance what we're going to talk about today, and kind of a resounding topic was, I guess, mental training and when you aren't able to physically train as much as you'd like to or the way that you want to, how you manage. And I know that Pablo just recently, by recently I mean like within the last few months, had an ACL surgery. This was back in, I think, the fall. And Sean has gone through a lot of medical difficulties. You've had how many surgeries, Sean?
18.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the experience that you guys have had working around that, working through that. Now, using some of those skills now in this COVID-19 time. Sean?
Well, okay, let me preface with that I know where everybody's coming from as a professional athlete and like the addiction of everything that we do with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA or whatever. I used to be a professional competitor myself. And when I had my first set of shoulder surgeries, I was preparing to fight in Pancrase. And I had a whole year off because I had to get a double set, a double shoulder surgeries left and then right. And I was down for a year. And all I could do was train around my injuries. All I could do was what I could do. And there was a point where I just didn't really have my arms. But one thing that did was in my mind, while I was sitting around doing nothing, when I threw a, outside of doing squats or whatever, I would, in my mind, imagine grappling, imagine new submission holds, imagine like cleaning up my technique, imagining myself do a technique, but cleaning it up, and after the 9 months went by when I was able to get on the mats again, and 3 months later, I went and took second place at the first Arnold Classic. I mean, I literally, when I got back on the mats, I was better than I was when I left 9 months prior. But I kept my general physical preparedness up. I kept my mind mentally charged with my whole goal was the mental attitude that I took with training for my fights. I put into my rehab. I did not mess around. And I put all the hours I possibly could. The rehab specialist had to pretty much put a choke collar on me and tell me what not to do, like slow the fuck down. Pablo, I imagine you're the same.
I got injured earlier, and it was we work around our injuries, like Sean said, and we, whatever our goal or whatever it is that we're trying to do, whether a competition or just training and improving ourselves, we have some, we want everything to be perfect for the match or for the fight, and then it's never perfect. We're always injured, and so we, or something happens in training, and so we try to work through the injury. But sometimes the injury is a little more significant than we realize. And ignorance is bliss. And I know I got a pretty significant injury, but I had a lot planned that I didn't want to know what was wrong with it on purpose, because then at that point I had to make a decision whether I, do something to fix it or whatever I need to do as far as the break and what my brain tells me that I should be doing versus what my heart wants to do, which is compete. So if I don't know something, then I work through it. But once you find out what it is, and injury, and some is more significant than the other, is that you don't have that ability to kind of work through it, then the reality sets in of, all right, now I gotta heal. I gotta do something to get myself, better physically so that I can continue doing what it is that I'm doing. And it is frustrating when you see everything that you want to do, knowing that you mentally can do it, but your body just physically can't do it. And doctors were on me so much about, you're going to feel that you can get back in there a lot faster because of the type of surgery I had. You can't trust that gut. You have to just listen to the advice, because I had a total ACL repair. And I think having the mental, there's a study that one of the doctors told me that when you train so much, and when you have this routine that you're doing over and over, and then once you stop it, there's the potential of getting certain even diagnosed or depressions outside of whatever you already may have had because of that. And so there's a lot in the mind that you have to really kind of resolve, before you can even you're worried about the injury. But one thing that Sean had said, and I really wanted to kind of stress on that, is that imagining the things that you're doing, the training, the experience, and there's been, I'm working on a book here, but there's been some studies where your mind doesn't know whether you really won the world championships in real life, or whether that feeling that you have in your head and you can recreate it, and now you're having this experience. The move that you do in your head, drilling it and building that the myelin or the muscle memory or whatever, you're building it by even thought and creation. And there's benefit to that too. And imagining the moves that you're doing, drilling it, not only physically, but mentally. I mean, you should do that even if you're not injured. But yeah, that's something that really, really does work as far as the mental aspect of preparation. And I'm talking about the technique. There's a whole
As a man thinketh.
Yeah, there's a whole nother mental thing about, the competitions. But yeah, Sean.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're describing to me like another level of the idea, as a man thinketh, so shall he be. You know what I mean? It's like that which you flood your mind with is what you will produce
A lot of
in
these
the physical realm.
A lot of these philosophies that you see from these ancient, as far as Eastern, ancient, philosophies and thoughts and principles and all that, are now are being scientifically proved that there's not only value, but there's scientific proof. You know, I once said that, you know, the difference between science and philosophy is you have a little more evidence or proof in science, but they're both the same thing. They're ideas and thoughts and concepts. And then now you got more proof. And yeah, there is a lot to, you know, to the mental aspect of everything, not just fighting, but just like.
Now, and something I see a
parallel?
A parallel here. Yeah. Like, okay, so like when we're healing from an injury, what's part of the psychology is to laugh a lot. Okay. Raise your spirits. I don't mean be stupid and just laugh at stupid shit or whatever, but that's fine too. Just as long as the endorphins get elevated, when you're happy, your immune system bolsters and you heal faster. Okay. Now, same thing in this thing. You touched on depression. The same thing. Elevate your mood as much as possible, because one thing that will get you to catch COVID-19 faster is to have a compromised immune system. All right. Or, I mean, might not stop you from getting it, but at least if you do get it, you have your immune system with you. Because if you're allowing yourself to be depressed too much, your immune system falters. You don't have the ability to fight this thing off. So for the same thing for healing, you know, after an injury, man, if you are stuck at home, fucking watch Netflix, laugh your ass off at something, find something that gets your mood elevated. Or if it's Disney's, if you just, that good, warm, fuzzy feeling, that is something that will help you heal. And that is something that will keep you from being depressed, you know, but also reach out too, you know, like I see, we tried doing videos and stuff like that. Pablo's done a video, Emil's done videos. We have other guys doing videos, but I think it's not so much about learning the technique. It's more about having the connection. Yes. Like all of us being able to just communicate, all of us still exist, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing is a bad thing. And as long as we just stay touched.
The online training that we've been doing as a team, and we've been, you know, rotating with instructors, and we've all been, you know, kind of communing. I mean, rolling and training, it's, you know, I've said this before, it's the way that we break bread. It's the way we, you know, commune together. And so, you know, just seeing each other in there, sometimes, you know, we just want to sit there and talk and not get into the instruction, but the instruction, you know, of course, is why we meet. So yeah, it's definitely, and one thing I wanted to back up on what Sean said, and when people hear depression and they think, oh, you know, you just feel down about it, or you just need to cheer up. The depression is something different that unless you've been in that situation, you don't, it's something that you talk about the endorphins and the chemicals and everything in your brain. It causes you, whether you're just feeling down or not. And it's not, I mean, there may be a certain thing that causes it, but then your body starts going out of whack. And so that mental thing is trying to prepare itself or cause certain stimulation so that these chemicals or these things happen. You know, you're talking about philosophy, science, and all the other things in there. And when you start, you know, like the placebo, I love these tests when they talk about, you know, 80% of the study of the medicine works, you know, and 20% of the placebo, you know, work. But the 20% of the placebo is really what fascinated me, because the 20% of the people who took a sugar pill were healed. It was just a sugar pill. The 80% is great, but it tells you in the mind is so amazing, and you can use that in not just healing yourself, but even better in yourself. You know, because if you don't feel like rolling, you're not going to roll good. If you don't feel like doing anything, you're not going to do anything good, not to the best of your ability. And so that's just getting you to that point. And right now, at this time, it's tough to the point where, yeah, even if you're missing rolling, you're missing this and that, once it opens up, are you going to be in the, and yes, maybe the first few you're jumping in, oh, I gotta go. And then it's like, well, some people, I think I privately had talked earlier about getting stagnant and, you know, not in being kind of almost just content with where we're at right now. And once everything changes, we have to be able to change back to our normal routine. And that might be, everybody's in a hurry to get back to it, but you know, when you get back to it, are you going to be ready for it? So, yeah.
Now, one thing that's really, I guess, kind of shifting focus a little bit away from this stuckness that we're in right now. You're both very different people in your jiu-jitsu or your grappling career or lives, because Pablo is an active competitor, has been competing up until the knee injury, even after the knee injury, whereas Sean hasn't competed in a long time. Pablo, how do you feel your competitive ventures change your training and your mentality on the mat? Like, how do you, like, when you're getting ready for a competition, how do you get ready? How do you prepare?
Well, to answer, because I kind of heard two questions in that. But
It's kind of a compound question.
In the beginning, how it helps me to be able to lead, you need to be able to relate. Whether you're active now or whether you were active before, we use our experiences of what we do, and everything I've shown, everything I've talked about, everything I do. It's me, personally, of what I've done, and I've never really showed a move that I haven't at least felt confident or to use myself in there, and so it helps me kind of not credibility just for everyone else who's learning from me, but even credibility for myself, that I feel confident that this move would work, but also just in the way that I prepare myself before the competitions, my mental preparation, which I'll talk about in a little bit. All those are kind of reinforced and fresh, and they've changed from how I am now, from how I was in the past when I was a lot younger, or more as far as even the physical abilities, etc. Although sometimes I feel that I'm better now than I was in the past because of my as far as experience. But I've heard. Or I haven't heard. I've seen where there are some instructors who are really good instructors, but horrible competitors, and there are some competitors who are great world champion competitors and athletes, but are horrible instructors. And so, they both help each other, but I don't think one really says that the other is going to be good. I think, and I didn't really talk about how I prepare and all that mentally, but just to talk about how it helps me in teaching the class. It's just one different aspect, but there are so many different ways you can use experiences, whether current or past, to instruct and to share with what we have. But as I've told you, Emil, and everyone else, I give you at least what my experience and what has helped me, but I don't want you to be me. I want you to be able to use your personality, add your characteristics. I mean, be true to the fundamentals and to the technique and to the theories of what everybody's done in the past, but you yourself walk different, move different, built different than I or anyone else or Sean or anyone else. And so use our experiences, but mold it to you so that it becomes you. And once it's, this is my move, well, it's not your move. The move's probably done many times before, but it's your move because you've turned it into it. Now it's instinct. Both you guys are really known for your leg locks, and it's nature that you don't even think about it when you do it. The time that you think about it is when you stop to instruct, to show us all the moves, and then you break it down. Sometimes you ask me a question, how do you do this move? And I'm like, or how do I escape this? And I'm like, well, let's put it on and let's work it out together to see the best. I can tell you one technique, but I can also just sit there and do it with you and see how it works. So I think it doesn't really matter whether you compete active or not. You always bring something. I don't want to I'm going to give Sean an opportunity because
I'm enjoying listening.
Yeah. So so I guess the question, Sean, for me to you, because it's going to be framed a little bit differently. How does your background? I mean, you fought in UFC 2, and then from there you developed, and you had some competition experience before that, but you really haven't competed in a while, and you focused more on honing the skill set of delivering information. Tell us a little bit about your background and your mindset as an instructor, as a teacher, and as a coach.
Well, as Jack Black said, those who cannot do, teach. Just kidding. I can do, but I also can teach. No, I just had a rough luck with, I never really got to be able to build off of anything. Every time I did something, I ended up having a surgery. Like it was just a series of unfortunate events. As my life could be prefixed with lemony snickets. But it's been like so many setback after setback, and then joining the military, and then being, that's like a prison in and of itself. I mean, you can't really go do all the stuff you want to do in fighting and things like that. So I put a lot of things on the back burner for so long that I just settled into the role of teacher. And I realized that because I had learning disabilities growing up and a stuttering problem and ADHD, so many things. I never learned anything in a classroom. I had to rely on autodidact capabilities, I had to basically translate through asking a shit ton of questions and people being mad about all the questions I asked, but all my questions I asked allowed me to dissect and find out exactly what the fuck they were trying to tell me, because I just didn't understand. So if basically I taught myself.
Hey, Sean, you just went really quiet.
Somehow my phone went off, and when I have all the notifications off. But anyways, I realized that me teaching myself, to me, I'm a very difficult person to teach and learn. It's my personality. Even now, just trying to explain it, it's hard for me to even get out. It's hard to even describe. But because I know how to teach myself, who has extreme learning disabilities, I can teach anybody. And also, when I first started martial arts, when I was 14, 15 years old, I had to teach 5-year-olds Taekwondo, for crying out loud. It's like wrangling wet cats to sit still in Catholic mass. It's like, it's impossible. So
never seen a cat before. I'm Catholic.
That's my imagination. I mean, that's what I figure it would be best like. So but because I understand, like, the most important thing in this world is understanding and communication between two humans, or a human and group of humans, that I really took a lot of time over the past 30 years of my life learning how to deliver a message, because I sucked at it. Like, I could not communicate as a child because of my stuttering was so bad. I was made fun of all the time for it. Adults lost their patience with me. But I always wanted to be understood. I had a lot of stuff up here, man. It's going 1,000 miles an hour, and I was ahead of the game on so many things, but trying to get it out, I sounded stupid. So I was very reclusive, a lot of solitude. I have 3 older brothers who are like 14, 13, 12 years older than me, and then a brother who's 4 and a sister who's 8 years younger than me, from different, my mom's 3 kids, had my dad, had me, they got divorced, my dad had more kids, so I grew up by myself.
Yeah.
So a lot of it comes from that hodgepodge of development, early development, right? So I view everybody as myself, like, so I don't assume that they know. I make sure that people know what I'm trying to explain. And then, just like Pablo, I don't try to make people clones of me. I don't want them. I teach them. I like teaching concepts and ideas and philosophies, and help you to become your own creator, not a regurgitator of my information. And that's where Pablo and I, it's always been a really cool relationship. Even our grappling styles are complementary. Like, when I first showed up, man, like all I could do to him was leg locks, and he front headlocked me every which way till Sunday, and he taught me how to improve my front headlock game. And I traded leg locks with him, and we've always had a complementary thing. We've always, like, in philosophies of training, that was always one thing, is like, we never believed in making clones.
I think it's one thing, and even something that you were saying earlier, as far as being able to learn. I think I was an adjunct professor for several years in college, as well as just my instructing and my own college experiences all the way through law school, and everybody learns differently. And as education, what we tend to do, and generally speaking, I don't want to speak for everyone, is we want something like a factory. How many can I teach one way at one time, and just kind of bulk it all in so that we can get as much as we can possible. And then those that have struggling in the way that I'm teaching the masses, well, then we'll kind of put them in a special thing to try to teach them. But everybody, even the mass that can get a little bit of what, that general teaching is, each one learns differently. And if you want to really learn, it's that one-on-one because now you're learning the way that that person, and it's hard to do one-on-one when you have a class of 100, people in the class or an accent. So you have to try to, you give the masses, but you want everyone to learn in their way. And that's difficult when you have so many. And what Sean has done, because of his own experience, is he's able to kind of see each one's unique, maybe understanding or not understanding, and try to see where I had problems, explain it in a way that I can understand. I know as an attorney, you have a lot of legalese and a lot of things that if you say it, even in English, people don't understand. And I don't need to make myself sound smarter because I use big words. I want to use simple words so that I can communicate what it is, because I think the more important thing is that you understand the communication, that what I'm presenting, and not to make me look smarter because I understand bigger concept words or whatever it is. And so to teach somebody the way that they can learn the best, that's the gift. That's the magic. Yeah, not trying to teach as many masses, but each individual. That's something that it's hard to learn to teach, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, Pablo. I think that part of the reason that I've gotten along so well with you guys, it's funny because, anybody who's not in the Cleveland area probably doesn't know this about me, but I had a lot of difficulties before I joined Strong Style and started learning from Pablo, and then later on started learning from Sean. I think that a big part of why we get along so well is the fact that, neither one of you has tried to fit me in your box. If that makes sense. We got a question. What's that?
There ain't no fitting you in any box, bud.
Too fat. We got a question from Brian Cunningham, who is one of our students. He said, to Emil's point, do you really need to train like you compete? I ask because, hold on, I lost the question. I ask because the idea that you treat a comp like any other day doesn't work for me. I need to get up differently for a comp in order to go.
Well, just to answer at least the beginning of that, I think diversity is more than just your ethnicity, but it's in the way that you approach to do different things, and the way that you prepare, learn, etc. And I think having different approaches, training soft, training light. In college, when I wrestled, there were some days where all we did was drill. All we did is drill. We drilled for 2 hours or whatever, then we did some cardio, but we drilled. And then there's some days where all we rolled was live. The easy part there is, college, you have a scholarship, it's almost like a job. If you don't do it, then you lose your scholarship and you quit. But here, you have students that are actually paying for a service to learn. And to be honest, it's almost like we're all kind of putting in to pay the bills so that we can all train somewhere. And some of us don't compete in competitions. The only way we actually get that live roll, or that stress relief by trying to make somebody else say uncle, is in practice. And so I try to focus a lot on the instructions, and drilling for me is one of the most, I know the line drills and all some of the things are great, but drilling the actual move over and over that we just learned, or that we learned somewhere else that we're trying to develop, we learn a move, we practice it 15 times in practice, and then we never practice that move again. You're not going to learn that move. So I really focus on on the drilling aspect. But there's some competitions wherever you just roll because you put yourself in the mindset. I think sometimes you can beat yourself up and get even overexhausted. I never roll live the week before my match to kind of get that little hunger in, but also to make sure that I heal from all those stuff. I know Emil will taper down a little bit, but he'll roll all the way up towards the day, the day or 2 days before the match. And I think he's here recently been, now that you're getting a little older, you guys are a lot younger, well, not you guys, but you're younger than me, it's starting to taper down a little bit, but still, you're still rolling, maybe a little lighter, etc. And we all develop our styles. So find your way, I think, Brian. But I don't think there's one way to do it. I think you try to find every way, and then you'll build your way through experience.
What do you think about that question?
You can't every day, Pohada. You can't all day, every day, man. No, you have general physical preparedness styles of rolling, like long, slow distance. Like even sprinters will do long, slow distance runs. Like what we would liken that to like what I call coffee talk rolls. John Saylor always coined, it's where you roll for an hour at a 50-50 pace where you can actually hold a conversation with somebody. And that what that does is build capillaries. It builds that long distance lactic acid threshold, things like that, like lets your body process that and teaches you how to go that longer distance. Now that hour is only for that few 5-minute matches that you're going to have at the tournament, or that 1 7-minute match you have as a super fighter, or 10-minute match, whatever. But that's a baseline kind of thing. And then you have roles where you're doing competition roles where you're going hard, where might be doing a fresh guy on you next, where you're never really getting a break kind of thing. But that's training your central nervous system and so on and so forth. And then you've got your regular roles like we have in a regular class night. But like Pablo is saying, here's the one big thing for competitors. If you're only training in the scheduled nights and those times, you're not going to be a champion. And if you are, it's a fluke. You have to put in your personal time. And Emil personally puts in probably more time privately than he does publicly.
I've been writing for a while, poetry, and I mentioned earlier, I wrote a book. I'm not selling the books. I haven't finished it, so that's not really any plug or anything. It's just almost like a hobby I do with my art, etc. But I've been, looking at online classes and looking at some tutorials and all that. And one thing I heard as somebody who's a writer, an avid writer, fiction writer or creative writer is, you don't have to be a genius, or you don't have to be a great writer, or I shouldn't say great writer, but that creativity or that special genius or talent. You just have to work hard, and you have to do it over and over and over, and just keep writing every day. He says, write for an hour or at least 20 minutes or something. Put a blog. You may not know what you're writing, or you may have a writer's block, but keep doing it over and over and over and build it. And you're going to be more successful in your writing there than somebody who just has that creativity but doesn't have that consistency. That applies to just jujitsu and to everything. If you can be the great talent, but you don't really put that commitment or that consistency with it, you'll be as good as you are now. But if you have that consistency, you're always growing. And I think, of course, talent with consistency is definitely a dream of every coach. But having that consistency without talent is a lot better than having talent without having that commitment or consistency. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the ability to endure sheer boredom.
Yeah. Well, I say when you drill,
that well, especially as a wrestler.
You're bored, and then after you're bored, drill it 1,000 times after that.
Yep.
So I got a question here from Connor McComas, who's another one of our students. It's on the screen. With the three of you being coaches, how do you teach and mentor a student who only approaches jiu-jitsu as a hobby or as a workout? That is a great question because...
Oh, I love you guys better than the competitors. Oh, you're much easier to deal with.
I think the one aspect that you, as far as a hobby and as a workout, and this is a talk that, maybe on another day, you're talking about sport jiu-jitsu and all the stuff that people talk good and bad about that, self-defense and all the stuff that people talk good, and bad about that, as far as, MMA, and that's a whole nother, MMA and no holds bar are two different things in itself, but also different than just real life. There are no rules in real life. And even in no holds bar, whether there are rules, there are rules. There are time limits. Even if there are no time limits in that sense, there's a cage, there's an area, right? So just having, teaching the different ways of jiu-jitsu, period, it's a self-defense. We can learn it that way. We can learn it as a hobby, but we give, like I said earlier, an opportunity for those to roll and enjoy, that 30, half hour or longer after practice. So I think our regular class that we normally do is cater for everybody, especially those who just make a hobby. And then those who want to compete, then you get a little extra push, or you get, we got to work on this, or we meet different times. So I don't think really the approach that I do for the general and those who compete are any different in the class structure. It's just, and because they both, I mean, you're trying to benefit and do the best technique and learn what you do to everybody, whether it's competition or not. The difference is not what we do with those who are just using it as a hobby. The difference is what we do to those who actually are using this as a competition, pro, etc. Now we do a little extra on there outside of that, and maybe even push or do a little more, extracurricular, training. But I'm not sure that we really do anything different in the actual class. We teach everybody, I think I try to teach everybody the same as far as the technique and how to do the move. It's just the mental, what we talked earlier, the mental aspect of competition, it changes everything. And you guys heard me say this before, in practice we can beat everybody, but then when we go to competition, we don't fight the opponent, we fight the event. You go to like IBJJF or a Nago, or you go to some real big event, and you see this whole if you go to ADCC it's so structured and overwhelming that you can get caught up in that adrenaline. But the person that you compete, or you may have different quality opponents, but you may have somebody that you would meet at some local tournament as well, and he's no different than in the local tournament, but the event makes it so we have to prepare for all that emotion, the excitement, and all the stuff. If you're just doing it for hobby, you really don't have to worry about that. We mimic those things as far as attacks from real life situations, if we were out in the street or being attacked in self-defense. But as far as competition, I think we do something different with those people who are competing. But I try to share with everybody the same thing, just because you can really kind of compare competition with street attacks and self-defense. There are differences, but there are also a lot of similarities.
So for me, when I train with somebody I know is a hobbyist, and we got both watching right here, somebody that's a hobbyist, I'm going to try to figure out what you can do, and I'm going to try to allow you to work on that while at the same time working on myself. Whereas with a competitor in the training room, I'm trying to simulate competition. I'm trying to fucking beat you. I mean, occasionally I'll change it. I'll alter that, and I'll work with, if it's a much lesser competitor, I might go into their area of strength. But otherwise, I'm, for the most part, focusing on beating them. Now, we got another question here from Brad McCrillis, and I thought this was a really good question. Kind of.
Hold on one second. I just got one thing to add, is that it's not so much about we don't change our approach between the competitor and the hobbyist. What it is it's the approach that the hobbyist has that versus the competitor has to their approach to the training, and what they need from us as instructors and what they're going to pursue. The competitor is going to prepare for a match that we're going to, on another level, different time, we might have to give them further instruction on how to prepare for that. You see in camps and things like that. But like with the hobbyist, one thing that you have an advantage in a way to the competitor is that you're not so hard on yourself. You're not putting so much stress on yourself and causing a mental blockage in your learning process. When you have stress, cortisol is dumped out, and when cortisol is dumped out, it stops the dendrite connections in the brain from making neural synapses, like the connections to cause memory to form. So when you're uptight and you have anxiety or pre-performance anxiety, or like you're getting ready for a fight and you don't want to lose, you don't want to look bad, which was always my thing, and I always wanted to perform well. So it was actually harder for me to learn. And when I stopped competing and when I became a hobbyist, and I am a hobbyist now, just like you, or if that's the question you're asking, because it's you, whatever, it doesn't matter, but I am a hobbyist. But that allows me to absorb faster. I learn faster now, and I've noticed that immediately when I stopped competing and became a martial artist instead of a martialist. A martialist fights. A martialist just fights and has the next fight and has the next fight and the next fight. The martial artist is the path. It's learning everything. I don't just learn BJJ. I don't just learn judo. I don't just learn catch wrestling. I learned sambo. I mess around with aikido. I mess around with karate. Taekwondo. All these different things are a part of me because I allow myself to learn it all now, and I see how it all flows together. And that's the luxury I have as a non-competitor. Now, when I said the non-competitor is easier, the hobbyist is easier to deal with than the competitor because there's so many other mental issues that we got to deal with. Which, Pablo, wouldn't you agree? It's the mental issues that we have to deal with mostly.
You know, and it's funny you had said that because one thing I wanted to talk about earlier is when
don't forget about Brad.
You look at, you know, as somebody, and I said this before with you guys, if you have a line on the floor, you know, 50 feet long, and I asked you if you can walk across that line, I mean, it's simple. It's easy. There's no stress. You're on the line. If I said you get $50 or say $500 to walk that line, of course, everybody would volunteer to walk that line. It's on the ground. I can walk that line, toe, foot, back, you know, no problem. But take that line and put it, you know, 50, 100 feet in the air, and now say walk that same line, the same line that was easy on the ground, but 50 feet in the air, the consequence is different. Now, if I miss and if I fall, I'm going to die or something serious can happen. And even for 5,000, you know, 50,000, I mean, are you really going to do it? And that's the thing. Maybe prepared, train, et cetera, you will. But the consequence in the pressure up 50, 100 feet in the air on the same line that it would be onto the ground is way different. The hobbyist can learn the technique on the ground. It can actually, there's no real consequence. But when you're competing, if you miss that line, that's a long drop. So that pressure and anxiety and stuff that we try to work with those competitors is because they're 50, 100 feet walking that same simple line. But on the ground, when we're just hobbyists, and even when we're not training for a competition, but just trying to train for learning, because if you're not training for competition, you should be training to learn. You know, because when you're training for competition, you're training to be the best as you are right now. Maybe a little bit better, but the best as you are now. When you're training to learn, you're trying to better that, you know, raise that ceiling so you're actually better than where you were. So yeah, there's so much to the mental aspect of jiu-jitsu competition, of anything, which is, you know, I guess one of the main parts of some stuff that I write. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. And I think that it's something that you have both helped me with in different ways is the mental aspect and improving as a competitor. And I feel like under your tutelage, I've been able to do some cool stuff. And, you know, hopefully I continue to improve with that. We have a question from Brad. He says, teaching the virtual classes has been, well, challenging. What are your experiences and tips? Now, for those that are watching that may not know, in our private group, the private Strong Style Brazo group, we've been doing Zoom classes. You know, there's a handful of instructors and we're just teaching stuff. So what do you guys think about the Zoom classes? Anything that you can offer to Brad or to other people trying to put together online content for their students?
Yeah, I just say just keep doing it. You know, I think it was Voltaire who says the enemy of the good is perfect, because you keep trying to wait for perfect, you'll never do anything, because nothing will ever be perfect. So just get it to where it's good and just see and just build on that. And so there's, we've had some good days, some difficult days. Sometimes the Zoom works. Sometimes I couldn't get the Zoom to work. There's some different, you know, but just keep pushing, keep doing it. I think we talked about it earlier. It's not just learning the technique. Of course, the initials, I didn't want us all to get like rusty and overwhelmed. We had this long break and then we come back and it's like, you know, so I want us to come in at least a little tempered, but at the same time,
what do I do with my hands?
Get together and we kind of, we commune, we join, we hang out, we just seeing, you know, each other on the video, you know, screen. I mean, we see each other.
Buddy check. And
now we haven't seen each other in a long time. So yeah, it's, you know, we all miss each other, and I think just keeping it going. I don't have all the answers to a lot of the technologies. In fact, Brad, you would probably know more about it than all three of us, but I would just say, just keep it going.
Sean?
I'm a tech laggard. I hate this newfangled bullshit.
You know, something's better.
Putting my thoughts out into space.
So, of the three of us, I think I'm the one that puts out the most.
You are the high functioning.
Like the one, I guess the answer that I have for Brad's question is basically the same as Pablo's, which is that in writing, in anything, don't try to be perfect, just fucking do it. It's funny because like when I first started writing for Jiu-Jitsu Times, that was the principle that I applied. I put out a ton of content. Some of it was really shitty in my opinion, and it got a lot of good attention. Some of it was great, and it didn't get much good attention, but I was just putting out as much as I could. And in doing so, I became seasoned with it. And I think it's the same thing for Jiu-Jitsu and for videos. Anyways.
It's like sex on your wedding night versus your 20th anniversary. Night and day. You know, it's awkward at first. But you just don't quit.
See, I was gonna say it a little differently. I was gonna say somebody talked to me.
I stayed PG. I could have been said and did.
If you write something now and you think it's great, you know, in 5 years you'll look back at it and you'll think it's horrible if you continue to write, because it'd be so much better in 5 years. I remember talking to somebody who wanted to write. But I guess the honeymoon sex and the 20-year anniversary, it's pretty analogous to that.
Well, it's my 23rd anniversary this Saturday. So, you know.
Today?
Congratulations.
Today?
This Saturday.
Congratulations.
So, another thing that we had talked about was the attempt to age gracefully as competitors and the attempt to, as grapplers. And kind of learning to measure expectations for ourselves, learning to be better about being better to ourselves. If I understood the text message string correctly. So what are your thoughts on that, Pablo and Doc?
As far as aging gracefully?
Not aging gracefully, but like taking care of yourself, taking care of your recovery.
Longevity, like, you know, like being able to do this for a long period of time, being able to not be a crippled old man like our progenitors usually are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think well, it depends on what your goals and what it is you're trying to do, and as far as competition, etc. I don't know if I'm the best to answer this question, because I remember when I'm still competing, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. But when even 10 years or 15 years before, and I was still competing, and I would have people say, well, when are you going to stop competing? I said, if you keep competing like this, you keep doing this. And I had done some fights too, and some things that back where there was not much sanctioning. And I said, when you get older, they're going to push you around in a wheelchair. And I said, but I'll get older because I'm active and I'm working, I'm training, etc. But yes, there is a lot of wear and tear of what you're doing, whether you're a professional athlete in baseball, football, whatever it is. There's going to be consequences on your knees, on your elbows, on whatever it is that you're doing. And it depends on at what level or not. So, as far as the hobbyists versus the competitors, there are some sacrifices in the age. And I think, well, me and Sean both are examples of the consequences of some of the choices that we decided. I would not give it up for anything. But yeah, I got a lot of wear and tear on my body in that. I think the biggest thing that I would say that I probably didn't follow as well is listen to your body, and listen to whether you need a break or to the injuries, because sometimes mentality as a wrestler is just tape it up and get back out there. But we're not as young anymore, and we have to really listen to our bodies. Otherwise, we come back faster and then we heal longer, versus we come back slower and heal faster, and then we can actually get back into where we want to be. But it's
slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
What was that, Sean?
I said slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah. So it's tough, because if you want to compete and you want, and you have that, whatever that is inside of you that makes you compete, that also makes you look over other things as far as in priorities of what you prioritize as being, more important in value. And sometimes the competition and success, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but there's more value to that than your health. And I'm not sure that should be, but some competitors, versus, opportunity to have a world champion versus a broken arm, I'll tap on an arm bar at, at a smaller event. I don't want to put any events out there at a smaller venue, but if it's like for the world champion or something like that, I might hang on just a little longer. Maybe I get injured, maybe I don't get injured, but the consequence, or the success. And so That's a decision you have to make personally. But if you want to be longevity, listen to your body and take the breaks when you need to take the breaks and heal when you need to heal. This will still be there when you recover.
We got a question on the screen from Connor McComas. He's the only one taking advantage of the live chat today. He asks, in other sports, the superstars are often noticed very early on in their career. Can the three of you see that when new students come to your gym?
Yep, and no. There's some that you see. I mean, we have such a big class, and there's, Tuesdays I couldn't even tell you the numbers that we have in there. But there are some that you come in and you're like, how long have you trained, or what have you done? Because you can see the movements. It's not the technique. I was explaining this to Pito, my son. The technique, it definitely helps you get to where you want to go. But there are some people that are just good on their own, and you've probably all heard this. Wow, if he learned some technique, he'd be really, really good. But what makes him really, really good right now if he doesn't have the technique? There's that that something, that natural, like a cat, presumably will land on his feet every single time instinctively. Some of us
biomechanics, fundamental biomechanics. It's like IQ, biomechanics IQ or something. You know what I mean?
And so you can kind of see that when you know what you're looking for, when you see the ideas. One thing I try to tell my students: the technique is important. The technique is crucial. It's everything. It's our tools, but we get so focused on the tools that we forget what the goal is. And so we're trying to use the tool to do something in here, but it's not working in here. And all you got to do is let go of the tool and then walk over there. But we're so blinded by the technique that we don't see that, maybe the door is open, let alone trying to pick the lock or something like that. So I think some of the talent, some of the technique, some of the talent without the technique can be seen. And then, of course, the commitment, the dedication, because you have some talent, they just don't want to do anything. You can see the potential in them, but you can't force feed somebody something that's voluntarily coming into your gym, that's paying you to come to your gym. If there was a scholarship and I was paying you, then I'm going to be on your ass, and you got to do this, you got to do that. If there was, there are certain things that you needed me to do, then I'm going to be on your ass. But if you're just coming into as a hobbyist or whatnot, then, if you're not motivated, you're not motivated. If it's just something different, but you can see earlier the potential, just like you'll see in as far as in the combines and some of the football, you'll see those who have a lot of statistics. Quarterbacks will have statistics. They'll have the, how many, the record in the yards, the records in touchdowns, the records in all the different, the feats and statistics in there. But then you have somebody that doesn't have all those records, maybe second in every single thing, but their physical ability, they're 6'10", or they're 6'5" and 230 running whatever, and they have those physical abilities. You can teach them the technique, but their natural ability itself, that's God given. And so, there are differences, but there's nothing probably more important than the work ethic. Work ethic.
I was just gonna say work ethic. I was looking at Emil up here in the corner. And I was like, what puts Emil set apart? I'm like, fucking work ethic, because he's not a coordinated person at first, kind of thing. He kind of defies all those things, but his work ethic defies everything.
Yeah, I won't
proves it all wrong
online here, Emil. But yeah, there are certain things where he can get into certain positions. It's just so awkward that how the heck I would never tell any of my students to get there. But
it's his goofiness. It's beautiful.
We had this one guy in college, Jamie Ramirez, and they called him he had this move they called the jelly roll. It was so sloppy. It's like you wouldn't teach anybody anything. But next thing you know, he's on top of the guy, pinning the guy. Like, what the hell just happened? And he just moves that way. And if it works, but it's not pretty or it's not whatever, and I tell you what, beauty is in the eyes of the perceiver. Then it's like, oh, I don't want to learn that. I don't want to, not everybody can sit there and do a, spinning upside down slam dunk like Michael Jordan. But guess what? It's still only 2 points. So it just gets and but yeah, we all the work ethic is probably one of the most important things.
But you can learn skill. You can learn talent in a way. You can learn coordination. You can learn all those things, and that's all the things Emil does. He's cat-like, you know. I mean, but he developed it out of the goofiness that he already was. You know what I mean? Like that awkwardness. But he created like a coordinated awkwardness. It's a deception kind of thing.
There's so many.
You know what I mean? It's beautiful. It's so cool. I don't know.
You have some people who are athletic, and then maybe they can use a lot of some of the technique to kind of almost enhance their athleticism. And then you have those like Felipe Costa, who and I think even Caltero, but Felipe will tell you he wasn't the most athletic. He never got picked to be on the team of whatever, as far as playing ball outside or football or soccer, but then he learned the technique and he focused on the technique, and he wasn't somebody that was going to, blast through physically, but through the technique. Multiple world champion, and it was the technique itself. So everybody, you can use the technique, you can use this, you can use that, you can teach yourself to be, it's just, I don't know who it was, Einstein or whoever, says that everybody is a genius if you figure out what you're passionate about and you're committed to it. If you're passionate about something and you learn and you're committed to it, you're a genius in that. It's just discovering what that is that you're good at and what you want to do. Because that want, which is also part of my book, is something that you have to have in order to be good. If you don't want to do it, you're not gonna be good at it. You're just gonna do it until you're content. But if you want to do it, kind of like in wrestling, you embrace the grind. You do the stuff that you need to do so that you can get what it is that you want, which is the goal, success, or whatever it is that you're working for.
Yeah, for sure.
It's always a threefold formula. It's to be successful in anything in life, but especially to be a champion or a well-rounded martial artist, is that you have to have shin. These are the Japanese words: shin, gi, and tai. Shin means a strong mind, strong heart, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. It's also indomitable spirit kind of thing, how to, like what we talked about when we have to train someone for the psychology of a competition versus a hobbyist or whatever. And then you have gi, which is technique and skill. You have to have sound skill, sound technique, and you have to drill it over and over and over again. And in order to have a peaceful mind and a sound technique, you have to have a body that's in shape, that has the endurance to pump out the reps and to be able to last the rounds. You have to have all those three things, the mind, the technique, and the physical. All those three things have to be dealt with. Yes, you do need to work out outside of the gym or outside of the assigned class times. You should work out, whether it be with body weight or physical, like dumbbells or things like that. You should be doing some form of extra cardio. All those kind of things you should be supplementing into your jiu-jitsu, because what happens is called anatomical adaptation when you do something over and over and over again for a long period of time, which is why you take a BJJ guy, right, who can roll BJJ rounds for hours. You throw them into an MMA setup, they're not going to, they're puking in 5 minutes. Same thing with
a swimmer can't bike and a biker can't swim unless you train for the event that you're going to do.
Yep.
Right, exactly. So there's so many, we have to train all these different components, and without the three things, you're missing out.
A private group, so that we all can talk with each other about the gym. We have our scheduled classes, but the gym's open for a long periods of time, and we can all train alone on our own, or we can have special groups, or we can get together on Saturdays, Sundays, on off times, and do the drilling that we need to do. And it kind of something that we did a while ago, and it's even grown to even more with our private group, that we're able to, our class structures, where we teach are one thing, but the way we train is, some of us, it's all day.
It's off schedule. Yeah. So the one thing I would add to what you guys were talking about is a specific attribute that I've found in people that become really good training partners for me, is that they listen. They listen to what they're told. They may not necessarily do everything I tell them to do, but I can tell that they're listening. I can tell that they're actually going to try the shit that I'm telling them. A lot of times When a beginner comes in, they're naturally athletic and whatnot, but they don't
You're
listen.
saying they're not an asshole.
Exactly. So anyways, we got another question along the same kind of topic. It's from Rocco Maurer, who actually I think is kind of one of those really athletic guys that just started training again. He asks, I've noticed I have an easier time with some submissions versus others due to my body type / biomechanics, etc. I was wondering, would you tell a beginner to focus on the submission / setups that seem to be working, or encourage them to keep building a wide knowledge base even though they aren't working as well? Thank you.
Can I take this one first?
Go ahead.
Well, like just in generalness of learning, we learn faster if we take something that we're familiar with and we find the similarities. So like when I see someone getting something, even though it's not exactly what I'm showing, but as an instructor, know how to link the fundamental mechanics of what you're doing with where I'm trying to get you at. And what that does is allows me now, if you're competing or you're doing things and you want to have a higher percentage of getting things, do the things you know right off the bat just to save your life. I mean, that's what I would tell someone. If it's to save your life, it means to be able to submit someone or in the street, focus on that thing, and that thing will lead you to the thing that I was trying to get you at in the first place. So if I can't get you there by getting you to connect the dots, eventually you'll get there. Yourself is how I view it as a general teaching kind of thing. I do this not just with martial arts, but anything I've ever had to teach anybody. I take something that you already have a good idea of or something that's clicking with you, and I try to help you connect the dots to that thing that I'm trying to introduce to you.
That's I think the one of the biggest struggles I think a lot of people have when they come in is it's even understanding the concept of jiu-jitsu or fighting on the ground. You see the backyard, brawls with brother or sister, and you sit there and tumble on the ground, and somebody's on the grappling bully, rape choke on top of the person, or this and that. And there's not, I mean, that's not really what you're going to see in practice. And now, so you purposely on their back. Well, not that is, it may work for a setup. It ain't going to work. Or you're going to catch anybody in a tap. But with that being said, okay. But with that being said, if somebody comes in and they don't understand, well, why is he wrapping his legs around me? Or why are they doing this? Or I don't understand this in wrestling. They want to, they don't want to go to their back, or, and so, it's trying to keep them almost stimulated to learn, to understand, because even a video game or when you're lifting weights, when you don't see the progress, it's a struggle to come back to get your butt kicked all the time, or to try to learn. So to try to make it fun, then it depends on what beginning you're talking about. Because Rocco was with me before, when he was in high school. He's been with me when him and his brother, when they were, a lot younger, and then they, life went on and work and college, and now he's back. But the thing is, and so he's not really a beginner, but he's a beginner material because he's revisiting everything. So in the beginning part, learning just what, the technique and to keep them kind of stimulated, I would focus on what they're good at initially, but you still have to learn every aspect, because you can be good at passing the guard, but if you get swept, the bottom, you better know what to do in the guard. Now we're just learning. It doesn't really matter whether you win and learn and practice. So you want to learn everything, but yeah, you focus enough just to keep, being fun, just to keep it fun and to keep it stimulating, on the stuff that you're really good at. And then you kind of build a foundation on that. Now, if you're looking past the, let's say instead of beginner 1, beginner 2, beginner 3, because beginners, I mean, I can say it to some point that, there's some aspects where I'm a beginner, and I've been doing this for a long time, but then there's also, once you get to that point where I'm, whether intermediate or I'm competing or I've to that next level, now I would say, get out of your comfort zone. Don't do the things that you're comfortable. Yes, practice and you want to be, keep sharp at what you're good at, but you also want to expand what you're good at. And if you just practice what you're good at, you're only going to be good as you are now, versus kind of branding out and taking, who knows, you may feel more comfortable doing certain things. I remember when Emil first came, I don't think Emil really did much leg locks at all. And then he kind of found certain things in here and he started adapting, and then he started, building off of that. If you don't really understand the concepts, you shouldn't get into it. But in order to be able to, in a live situation or competition, but in order for you to be experienced to get into it, you got to do it in practice. So at some point, depending on where you're at, beginner, as long as you're committed and you have a foundation and base, and Rocco, you do have a foundation and a base. Now start getting out of your comfort zone to be prepared if you're in a situation where you where you're uncomfortable with, because you're going to get there in a real life situation. But as you're just starting, to keep you focused, to keep you motivated, when you're lifting weights and you see that little vein pop out of your arm, or when you're playing a video game and you get that new gun or thing, weapon on the upgrade or whatever, now you want to play with it more. Now you want to do more. So that motivates you. So I would just, try to keep motivated, try to keep it fun so you're consistent.
Okay, great. Now I got a question here, another question from Connor. He's in these comments, and I think this one's a really good question, and I think it's a bit of a controversial question. We're going to have different opinions here. He's asking, a few top jiu-jitsu competitors in the world have the opinion that belts, quote unquote, don't matter. Thoughts?
Are those top jiu-jitsu competitors black belts?
I know Gary Tonin has come out on this one. I know that one, but I don't know about any other black belt competitors off the top of my head.
I would say back in the day, like in 94 to 2000, that would have been a firm, like an absolute yeah. I mean, I was a white belt tapping out black belts. You know what I mean? But for me, no, what it is, it's a mentality. I mean, you can have somebody who's like, for me, I took forever. Pablo, you know me. I was a white belt forever in BJJ. I just, even though I wasn't really a white belt, but I just never gotten involved in all the things. And then you were probably my first real first person I consistently trained with in BJJ. All my BJJ in the past was just simply my training partners. You know what I mean? I was never a BJJ student anywhere. You are actually like my first friend, lateral, because I was always the catch guy. I came from Team Shamrock. There was always the beef between BJJ and us. So I had kind of just I don't need it. I never thought I needed it. You know what I mean?
Shamrock and Gracie's.
Yeah. So it was, but it was just the idea.
Yeah.
It was the idea of, it was just to me, grappling was grappling. And I still believe that. But it was just simply at that time, back in that day, there was just so many people grappling, and a lot of the black belts today were guys just like me, that we fought, we trained, all of our grappling was for MMA. Pablo, you know what I'm talking about. Everything was combat oriented. There was strikes being thrown in the jiu-jitsu that we were doing, and it was very different. And a lot of times everything was just submission grappling back then. And you had Gracie black belts, you had wrestlers who knew submissions from Indiana, some good old boys who took some lessons from Hickson and brought it back to Indiana. I mean, you had this hodgepodge of stuff where it really didn't matter. But nowadays, I'm actually on the side of, yeah, it really does matter, because we have more of a standardized syllabized thing, which is where the IBJJF does get some good credit and things like that. We're not going to talk about IBJJF and shit like that today, guys, so don't even ask. But it's literally like that's, we have a standardization now, and we have it's a good what do you call it, but we need to have some kind of a standard, you know what I mean? Otherwise, anybody who says anything, Emil, I know how you stand on this. We agree on this, Yeah, you're a little more heated about it than I am, where I'm just fuck it, I don't give a shit. But
no.
It does. I think it does matter. But when it comes down to a mano-a-mano fight, it's all in who knows how to employ it better. It could be a white belt or it could be a black belt.
I think when you ask that question, you can interpret it so many different ways. Belts don't matter. Thoughts, okay? Belts don't matter. Well, it depends on what the belt, what the matter, what the reasoning for it mattering. Does it actually show your knowledge, experience, your commitment, and what you've done in jiu-jitsu. You know, Helio Gracie was a red belt, 90-some years old, and there's probably several, you know, and maybe I'm going to get, you know, beat up for saying this, but several, you know, 200-pound, you know, blue belts that would probably crush him. 90 years old. Does he know a lot more than those guys? Does he? I mean, this guy's, you know, the godfather, so to speak, of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I wouldn't take anything away from him if, you know, he ended up fighting Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar, you know, squashed him. That doesn't take anything away from his red belt or from his pedigree and everything he's done. So the belt, in that sense, you know, shows you where you're at amongst your peers, amongst your instructors, you know, within yourself, etc. And it's amazing, you know, you say Michael Jordan is the shoes, you know, it's the belt. How much, and I said this to you too, Emil, how much better you'll be once that belt's around your waist. And it's not that the belt does anything to you. You're no different than the day before when you were a purple belt or a blue belt or a white belt, but it's that confidence. And now we're getting back to the mentality of what you believe in yourself. You know, everybody can believe in you until you believe in yourself. And something about that belt helps you in that. But as far as competition and whether what's going to predict or whether win or lose, I've seen so many black belts lose to lower belts, and I've seen lower belts beat upper belts, and I've seen the belts that beat upper belts that lost to lower belts too. It's now the competition. If I went and there's a match, and I'm not trying to revisit or make excuse or anything there, where I've lost matches where I was better than the person. But the rule aspect of it, the concept of the game, I lost the game. I lost on the rule set. I didn't get tapped. I didn't get caught. I didn't get here. But because of the rule set in the wrong game, and if you were to watch the match and a different thing like fight to win or something like that, where you have judges, then okay, there might be a difference in the outcome of the case. But I knew what the rules were, went into the rule. And does it mean that, okay, now that other person, whether they were a blue belt, you know, it was another black belt, but whether they were a lower belt, whether that mattered, I don't think the belt mattered. It was the competition. It was the person. When I was a blue belt years ago, I'd beaten some black belts in competition. I'd beaten some brown belts in competition. And did I know all the stuff that they knew? Probably not. But I was better at what I knew than what they were good at, you know, in there, and they couldn't stop at what I knew, and I was able to win some of the things. So the belt matters in some aspects. But if you're looking at whether it's going to be a predictor of who wins or loses, I'm not sure that it really matters at all. So it depends on how you pose the question. What does it mean when you say whether it matters?
Yeah, I tend to agree with both of you guys. I think that as a signifier of a general level of competence, the belt obviously matters. I think that in a competitive setting, it's a mixed bag. You saw Kainan Dwarch, you know, beating high-level black belts. You see Nicky Rodriguez, you know, who as a blue belt took, was it second or third at the ADCC? Got his purple belt on the podium. They should have just given him a stripe, honestly.
I see freshman college guys going there beating senior college wrestlers. You know, right. And, you know, they were just, you know, coming from grade school and coming into junior high or high school, and then, you know, beating guys who've been wrestling, you know, their senior year. You know, a lot of it is the individual rather than the belt. But
it's relevant. Its relevance is based on contextual, you know, the context. You know what I mean?
Belt, there's more to it than how good you are. It does give an indicator of your competency, but it also there's that respect that is given behind it, because it's almost like in the military where you're given, you know, the different ranks. I mean, I guess rank would be a word, or the different, you know, the medals or what you are at what level, lieutenant, this and that. And now in there, I mean, you wouldn't be running one of my classes as a white belt, but now as, you know, blue, purple, brown, you know, you it's not that you do know a lot more now, but it's not that there was any big, you know, there's that confidence and the respect of what you've given to jiu-jitsu, to the team, to grappling. So that honor is something that you receive, not just because of your skill set, but what you've given back to the team and to jiu-jitsu.
Well, you know, my greatest motivation to actually get off my butt and get my black belt, you know, I was a black belt 10 years ago, right? Before I ever got my black belt. I've been technically a black belt since March of 2018. was two of my students, Joel Bain, or actually three of my students, Joel Bain, David Elias, and Santos Caban. They were all my students in the military. Like I said, I'd never been belted in BJJ or anything like that, but I trained them. And with what they knew, they went and started training in BJJ, and within like a year or so, they became black belts because of how much they knew. And then when they were like, dude, you got to get your black belt, I'm like, no, I'm not, I don't care. It really has nothing to do with me. I just train people and it doesn't matter. And then Emil comes around and he's the fourth nail in the coffin saying, dude, you got to get your fucking black belt, man. You got to fucking get ranked in this shit. You got to do it. So I went to Carlos Catania. He was Sergio Penha's enforcer. And he was also Joel's and Dave Elias's instructor. And I got introduced and I started training with him. And I was like, over a period of 2 years, I started like, passing off information, just doing tests and things like that. And it was just like, dude, you should have been black belt 10 years ago. This is, an honor to be able to give this to you, kind of thing. And it was a cool moment. It really was a cool moment. That all those years of me saying, nah, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Pablo, you're right, man. There is something there, because like Emil said, your biggest problem, you have something to share with people, but people don't know who you are. You've done all these things, but people don't know who you are. Pablo, you have a great record, man. You've won championships. You are solid. Like, you've proven your stuff. I'm that enigma, I'm that thing, like any little thing helps me in my way. Because like anytime I tried going for a run, I ended up getting a surgery or something held me back in life. And, if it wasn't for Emil, Joel, David Elias, and Santos Caban, I wouldn't have my black belt, and then teaching alongside with you, and then you and I being brothers and all of this it's just a cool thing. It really is. Like, so it means something different to everyone. I'm even that curmudgeon that was just the catch wrestler. I don't need this, I don't need to put a label on anything or whatever, but I have a black belt in BJJ, and I have a black belt in judo, and I have a black belt in taekwondo, and I'm equivalent black belt, like there is no black belts in Sambo, but I know that as well, and catch wrestling and all these things. But it does feel like a completion, like not, it's like just something. It's that outward symbol of an inward journey.
So that leads me to my last little kind of question that I have for you guys, based off of stuff that both of you just said in the last little bit. What are your thoughts on judo, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling? Like, how are they complementary? How are they different? Pablo is a high-level wrestler. Sean is a catch wrestler and a judoka. So I'd love your thoughts on that, because both of you are true experts in both BJJ as well as that.
Actually, that's where he and I agree on a lot too. That's another one of those things. I've always admired his style, because he really fused wrestling into jiu-jitsu. That's the question, is how well can you fuse it? You know what I mean? The two things. Wrestling goes great with no gi, and even gi. I mean, fuck, who cares? If you can grab someone with no lapel and you know how to wrestle, you give that fucker grips. Pablo is a beast when it comes to all that kind of stuff.
I think when we first started being introduced to jiu-jitsu, it was style versus style, and the whole gimmick or idea or whatever you want to call it was
there.
My style is better than your style.
My style lost really fast.
But the thing is it wasn't a fair analysis, because where there are no rules, there were certain rules that kind of handicapped certain people, and so even the cage in itself. If there's no cage, it's going to be hard, unless you're wrestling, to be able to take them down or do certain things. There's a lot of different things to it, but the fact that
an eye gouge will pass any guard.
Eye gouge, a whole bunch of different things. Now, with that being said, it's funny how there are some purists who say, well, that's not jujitsu, or that's not this, and only jujitsu works, or this and that. And I've run through the history, and that's a whole nother topic of how I started with jujitsu and where it all went from when I started. And I started back in, I'll say, jujitsu in '98, and wrestling or grappling, all that, and, in the '80s, and it's been, but there's grappling is grappling. Or you can put names, titles. It's kind of saying, oh, I train UFC. You train MMA. It's grappling is ground fighting. Whether swimming is swimming. If you're in the water and you want to go from one side to the other, however, whether you do a backstroke, whether you come underneath, whether you do a regular, whether you do a butterfly, you're swimming from one side to the other. The object is get from one to the other and making sure that you don't drown and that you're able to move. In grappling, you have wrestling is one aspect and covers, and it's one type of rule structures and focus. You have judo, you have jiu-jitsu, you have sambo, you have multiple. You can just go on the grappling, on how to move on the mat, how to fight on the mat, or even on your feet when you're grappling, tying up, etc. And so, or pummeling, etc. So, yeah. Learning every aspect of it is only going to benefit you. If I can have more ways to swim from one side to the other, I'm going to have a better time swimming long distance or swimming in a very adverse situation or water climate than I am if I only know one style. If I have multiple ways to get to the other side, and same thing on the ground. If I know multiple styles, it's Holes Gracie, who happened to be arguably the best Gracie of all the Gracies. He was Hickson's big instructor, and he somebody who had kind of, I don't want to say modernized, but he revolutionized jiu-jitsu, and the fact that he started training with wrestlers and sambo, and there are some stories and links that I've even posted where he went off and learned other aspects of it and made his jiu-jitsu better because he used other aspects of the ground fighting. So I don't think that there's necessarily one style that you should train. I mean, it's nice to have that focus we said earlier about beginners and having what you're comfortable with and focusing on that. But to limit yourself on that, or limit yourself in everything, you're doing just that. You're limiting yourself. And if something that you want to try and it doesn't work, you do it in practice and it doesn't work, then okay, then you don't do it. But you won't know. They talk about success and failures, and you learn a lot from a loss. So I'd rather be undefeated and know nothing. But if the loss, what it does, you find out the wrinkle. You find out what it is that you need to fix in the loss. When you win, even if you did the wrong technique, you reinforce the bad technique because you won on it. So,
yeah.
Try the wrestling, and if it doesn't work,
the loss exposes truth, right?
Absolutely. So, ignorance is bliss. I'd rather be undefeated. But with that being said, that's just my competitive nature. With that being said, yes, the different styles, you're going to see what works, what doesn't work. But if you stay away from one style because of some pride issue, well, then that's your choice.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So we are at the hour 23-minute mark right now. We're coming close to the end of this because I know that one of our guys is going to be teaching class at 6:30, and I don't want people focusing on this during the class. But one last question that I think is it's a good one. It kind of goes back a little bit. We got a question from Lisa Shearer, who I believe is one of Cody Stevens' students. She asks, do any of you have any tips for a beginner who needs to get over her fear?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Exposure, limited, incremental exposure. It's, it's stoicism. You want to, if you have a fear of, say you're claustrophobic, okay? This is my own story. Is that, getting choked was hard for me at first, but it wasn't until when I was getting choked at the lines, then you choke, you're getting choked unconscious and there's no other way around it. But that in and of itself was a quick, I'm not going to die. At least that was my first reassurance that I wasn't going to die. I came out of it. But John Saylor, he is a very large man, very strong judoka. We'd be grappling with the gi on, and at the time it was foreign to me, and he would choke the shit out of me. But he too was also claustrophobic, and he had been pinned down in the 60s, the old school way of being hazed in judo and just being tortured through pins and things like that. But he would talk me through it. He would lock me in the choke. He'd be like, all right, I'm going to let go and you want me to let go, but just hold on for a while, experience. So I just constantly put myself in the situation that I was afraid of. And there's a philosophy within like the religious realm or whatever, is to touch the idol, the thing that you fear, that thing that you hold superstitious, that thing that is going to doom you forever if you touch it. But if you go and just go ahead and touch it anyways, and you realize you're not going to die, it's that kind of idea, that kind of philosophy. And it's just, you do it incrementally, like say if I want to get in the pool, I teach someone how to get in the pool. We sit there at the edge of the pool with your feet in the water. Once you got your feet in, we put your shins in to the knees, to the thighs, so on and so forth, until we get you completely acclimated. You have control. You have complete control as a student as to what you will put yourself through.
I can't agree more as far as kind of acclimating yourself and taking your time with it. And I think the patience, you rush too much and it may be overwhelming, and then you don't want to do it anymore. But I also, communication, with your partner, who you're on with, let them know at the times where you kind of are feeling kind of claustrophobic or where you start getting an anxiety attack. And I'll tell you what, and people who at most would understand and appreciate, some who don't, anxiety and depression and a lot of other issues are huge in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and in grappling and in any type of, as far as the community in there.
That's why people are having meltdowns. That's why you see every other fucking meme being something how much they miss jiu-jitsu.
And I tell you, having that communication with your partner, letting them know, hey, especially even like, don't worry about the tap. I don't know why everybody, I have an issue with tapping. I have an issue where because the mentality of how I came up, you don't tap. It was kind of like the Henzo Reishi, it's like Sakuraba breaks, the shoulder, but I didn't tap. Yeah, but you got beat on the technique. I don't know about the whole tap thing. And now the tap is, if you feel overwhelmed, you can't breathe, claustrophobic, but there's no submission, tap. Just say, I need the break. I need to breathe. Take a moment out. Step aside. We have such a diverse class and such beautiful students in so many different ways, and everyone has to handle jiu-jitsu differently. And there are some people who you think are some of the toughest and bravest and courageous, and they are, but you don't realize they're also dealing with a lot of emotional anxieties and a lot of other issues that they have to try to manage as they're going. There's no control. You try to control something, it's controlling you because it's got your attention. It's more of a management and all that. But I think increments, consistency, getting yourself to a point where you're a little more comfortable, and communicate with your partner that, okay, I may, just let you know, I may end up tapping just in a position that I may not be, or just, I do it with my knee. Hey, watch my knee. Like, I won't go for leg locks if you don't go for leg locks. I won't break your neck if you don't go for my leg, or, it's something in that we're communicating and we're adapting to our situation at the time, and we can roll. I have rolled a little bit more than I probably should have, but it was frustrating because there's some things I couldn't do. And there's certain things that it would be disadvantaged too. Like, it's not fair for me to ask Emil, don't do your A game to me, but I'm going to choke the shit out of you.
Yeah.
It's not even, so.
No, that is fair right now. That's fair. Fuck that.
But at the same time, communicate so that we can adapt, so that we can roll. Otherwise, oh no, Pablo, I can't do that. Then I can't roll with you. And there's some things too, like I even talked, Emil being a little bigger, even though he thinks he's smaller. A butterfly. I may hurt myself just trying to lift his big butt. Then
my groin.
So yeah, there's things you have to, but yeah, I would just communicate, with your partner.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to be doing these daily, and I'd love to get you guys back on in a couple of weeks here. I mean, at this point, I've already got another week completed. So, but we'll be in touch, and thank you guys so much for being my coaches as well. Personally.
Hey, to all of our students, if any of our students watch, hey, hang on tight.
It's slowly but surely, and just do things you can. One thing, and that's a question I've seen in here and all that, and I don't want to go off here, but as far as the cradles and MMA and BJJ and all that, you know what? Try it, practice it. I wouldn't do it. It's too much energy you're wasting to hold somebody down, and you're tying yourself up so you can't move. There's more to it, but I didn't want to leave Casey's question unanswered.
Yep. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a great night, and we'll be in touch.
Take care, guys.
Tune in tomorrow night, 5 o'clock. I've got John Combs coming on. Peace. Thanks, guys.